readers,
reviewers,
countrymen,
lend us your ears.
And a huge thank you to all of our Patreons.
Thank you to the Pit Fighters, the First Swords, and all of the Bright Stars, Truth and Courage.
Hello and welcome back to for the very first time to the channel. Sorry we were absent last week, but we are right back at it again. And today we're here to give one of our monthly updates / summary / chats. And yeah, so today, as you obviously know from the title, we're going to be talking about what we read during the marvellous month of March.
Oh,
we
nice.
love a bit of alliteration.
We do.
And so, Ed, do you want to say, how many pages did you read in March?
I know March was a long time ago for most of us, but yeah, I read 4,091 pages across 8 books, so pretty decent March for me.
Very nice.
I was hoping for more because I actually took me a month to read a book, which I actually didn't finish in March. I finished it in April because it was a slow burn and I really wanted to appreciate it. So then I was dipping into other books at the same time. So yeah, 4,091.
So
pages, not books.
It's always about like wanting more, isn't it?
Yeah,
the fire, because that's probably one of your best reading months, and still yearning for more. And I read 3,164 pages, I believe, and I think that was split across 9 works, and so yeah, even spread. And let's talk about those works right away. So Ed, I think you read more, so why don't you kick it off? And
I would never ever kick any book by Pierce Brown. Maybe someone else, but not Pierce Brown.
Not
Pierce
Brown.
Probably get a howler on me. But yeah, Morningstar is the finale of the Red Rising trilogy, the first trilogy. I've been doing a reread in anticipation for Lightbringer, which is book, I believe, 6 of the Red Rising
And who gave you the idea to reread it?
Mike's Book Reviews.
Very nice.
So yeah, so it's been a great journey. I forgot how much I loved Red Rising. I forgot how good it was. I also forgot many plot twists from Golden Sun, and I also forgot how awesome Morningstar actually really is. And it's a great ending. It's very satisfying. There are some kind of typical fantasy-ish moments really here. The YA is long gone, it feels like, but there's also you know, so many different elements to Morningstar that make it a riveting read. It has great characters, it has redemption arcs, it has, you know, these moments where you feel betrayed, it has the upset of a finale, and it has everything that you would hope to read in the final book of a trilogy that has been built up over a long time.
It is a visceral experience.
It is a visceral experience, and it's a lot of fun to read. Pierce Brown has a great writing voice, and it's so easy to get sucked into. You know, it is still kind of that Hunger Games style, where in turn, you know, but also that aspect of Red Rising is also gone at the same time, because, you know, that's where it lent itself from. But yeah, Morningstar is a great read because of the action. It is kind of set in space, but it feels like a fantasy book at the same time.
It's sci-fantasy.
It is sci-fantasy, but it does definitely feel like a fantasy book rather than a sci-fi to me anyway, but I absolutely loved it.
Very nice, Ed. And yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? And it's probably aged like a fine wine, isn't it? Because it was written quite a few years ago now. I didn't realise how old Red Rising is. But now getting to, was it Lightbringer is the 6th installment coming out. Yes. And that's going to be awesome to read that. And now on to mine. I read volume 2 and 3 of The Sandman. And this is book 1, but I read volume 1 in February, and then finished book 1, which contained volume 1, 2 and 3 in March. And so yeah, I really enjoyed it, very thoroughly enjoyed it, one could say. And yeah, I just love the creativity that Neil Gaiman just lets loose with nothing held back at all. It was absolutely fantastic. It was very similar to the adaptation, which means that the adaptation is kept very honest and loyal to the source material, which of course is this. And yeah, I did commit sacrilege and watch the adaptation first, but yeah, I've rectified my mistakes, and I love this in different ways, because whilst it was very honest and true, the adaptation was anyway, there was extra here, which was even weirder, even wilder, and even crazier, which I absolutely loved following. And I love the little links to things that have happened in life that we know about, but Neil Gaiman gives like a reason why they happen, like the formation of A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. So yeah, I will never look at that play the same, but I'll look at it with more fondness. And so yeah, that is The Sandman, volume 2 and 3.
And the next one for me was my favourite book of last year, Dreaming the Eagle by Manda Scott. We've been doing a reread of this on our Discord channel. channel. So if you want to jump on the series, then go check it out on our Discord, which is in the description below. But yeah, I absolutely loved returning to the world of Boudica. You know, this is, if you don't know anything about Boudica, she was probably the most important queen to have ever lived. She is a Celtic queen and a monumental figure in history. And to read this historical fiction is imperative for you as a reader. If you like fantasy, read it. If you like historical fiction, read it. If you don't like reading, you just watch our videos for the fun of it, read it. Because Dreaming the Eagle is beautiful and it is harrowing. It is addictive and it is also eye-opening. The different cultures that you read about are so just easy and fluid to read about, and they're so easy and fluid to love as well. You cannot help but feel this kind of this connection, this bond and attachment to the culture that Amanda Scott's writing, and it is all because of her enthusiasm. I think you know immediately that Amanda Scott absolutely, she has kind of irrevocable love really of this period, of this culture, and also of the dreaming. Now the dreaming is what I think something that fantasy fans will definitely get behind, and it is the way that the Celts would dream, and it was kind of more, it's much more than a dream though. They would, you know, it's kind of like their vision quest, their long night kind of, and their dream would affect them throughout their lives. It would kind of give them a kind of totem. It would be a sigil in their lives that they would always fall back on. The dream was a massive, massive part of their culture. So that aspect is what fantasy lovers will love. And also the battle at the end here, the Battle of Midway, is just one of the best battles I've ever read. Ever. Boudica's a brilliant character. Her brother, Ban, is even better in my opinion. And the amount that Amanda Scott writes about animals is the perfect amount.
The perfect amount, and
which
that
is hard to find.
Lot. That means a lot,
yeah,
because we love some animal companions. And yeah, as Ed said, we have a read along going on the Brothers Gwyn at the moment. We read Dreaming the Eagle in March, and we're doing one instalment of the series all the way to June, where it will finish. And so yeah, we've had so many people comment and love it in the Discord, and yeah, it is almost unanimous that people have enjoyed it, isn't it? And it's just amazing. Spreading the love, hearing other people have really enjoyed it, and we're so thankful to all of those who have joined in. But it's not too late for you to jump on the bandwagon, and we will have a review for Dreaming the Eagle coming out in a few weeks. And so yeah, that's Dreaming the Eagle. I'll be reading book 2 in April, but we'll be talking about that in our April TBR video. And next up I have Lustrum, which is some historical fiction as well, and this is by Robert Harris, and it is book 2 of the Cicero trilogy. I read book 1, what's book 1 called again? Imperium, there we go. It's on the light bulb moment.
So upset and then so happy.
Yeah, I read Imperium in February, Lustrum in March, and I wonder what you think I'll read in April. But yeah, Lustrum is the second instalment. It goes a lot more into the character of Julius Caesar, as Cicero has gotten a position of power, we shall say. And yeah, so that brings a lot more chances for him to kind of use his influence, but also a lot more responsibilities and far more enemies, because often with power comes, not responsibility, but yeah, rivals who want to kill you at every chance they get or destroy your career and reputation.
Does not say that, I don't think.
But yeah, so it was really enjoyable. Julius Caesar was an incredible character in this. I really enjoyed him in book 1, but Lustrum is where he really takes to the stage, and yeah, it's just fantastic. And any depiction of a character figure such as Caesar, whose name is echoed down the ages, when it's done interestingly, it is always fascinating to me. And Lustrum was brilliant.
Yeah, you have these kind of cultural heroes and also cultural villains, and also these people that are huge figures of history that are always so much fun to read about. Like, that links me to my next one, is The Generals by Simon Scarrow, and this is book 2 of the Wellington and Napoleon Quartet. And obviously Napoleon here was a hugely impressive, successful and very important man of French and worldwide history.
And very controversial.
Very controversial as well, but yeah, he is he's just a figure that's a household name, and like Caesar, he is a very impressive man, and it's always fun to read when an author has written them so well with that kind of spark.
Yeah,
that these characters have a little bit of a flair to them, which
it's very difficult, isn't it,
from the rest that are around them.
Yeah, it's very difficult when you take a figure like that. It could easily fall very flat and disappoint people, couldn't it? Because you're exploring the mind of one of the most famous figures in history. Yeah. And so, yeah, when it's done well, it's fantastic. But it's a lot of risk. It's a big risk for authors.
And where I loved Young Bloods, which is book 1 one of the Wellington and Napoleon Quartet, I didn't love the generals. I enjoyed the generals, but what I think it struggled with was having a balance. Whereas in book one, you had that kind of coming of age feel, which I really loved. And seeing that in the historical fiction aspect, I haven't seen that really that much at all, to be honest. And seeing two characters, because it's told from Wellington's point of view, Arthur Wellesley, and also Napoleon's point of view. So, and it's so much fun to read about both of them, comparing them, and it's really fun when you know a little bit of the history, seeing kind of the references that Simon Scarrow has made. I don't know too much, but you know, just for example, if you just know where both of them end up in their lives, it just adds to the immersion and to also to the reading experience. The Generals was, as the name of the book probably suggests, that focusing on both of these young men. They are now generals, and they have, they've parted ways, and Arthur Wellesley is focused on a campaign in India, trying to put down the local rebellions, as well as kind of keep British control, establish that control and government, and then Napoleon's dealing with the French Revolution and what comes along with that. So there wasn't too much of a balance. I really enjoyed how Napoleon was written and Arthur Wellesley. They're both intriguing figures. Napoleon here wasn't quite as interesting to follow as in book one, where he felt like quite an extraordinary person. But it was still a good read. I think Simon Scarrow is a brilliant writer. I was so impressed with what he did in Youngbloods to make that coming of age feeling. It felt so fresh. In this book, maybe it's to do with me because I'm not a big fan of this style of warfare. Obviously, it is kind of, a lot of line formations and, musket fire and that kind of thing. It gets pretty samey after a while. So, and also he has the constraints that he has to follow history. We know so much about Napoleon and Wellesley that you have to follow their beats. So it's kind of hard to, take things off page, if it were. But it was still a good read. I'm definitely going to carry on the series because I really want to find out where they go next. But yeah, The Generals wasn't my favourite. I'm sure it probably won't be my favourite in the long run. But I definitely enjoyed it for what it was.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. And interesting what you're saying about those restrictions, because I also imagine that as these characters got older and more had a grander influence and had an impact on the world, that there's far more recorded about them as well. So there's a lot more freedom he probably had with Youngbloods. It's a great name as well, Youngbloods, isn't it? Great title.
It does sound like vampire.
Yeah, it does. Is it a quartet?
It is, yeah.
Are you going to be reading book 3? What are you doing, one a month?
Not sure, maybe.
But next up I have From Cold Ashes Risen by Rob J. Hayes, and this is the third instalment of the War Eternal series, and I've also read Never Die by Rob J. Hayes, and he is coming up to be one of, if not the most consistent self-published author. I've had the pleasure of reading their works out there. He really gives interesting fantasy reads with very dynamic and unique characters at the core of the story, and he gives you a story that takes you in different directions. You have some of those fantasy tropes like getting the group together kind of thing that I absolutely adore, but it may not click with you. But then he makes it very different at the same time, and it is hard for an author to have kind of the ending be surprising whilst also being satisfying, because often readers, they're expecting something because that is what they would like to see. They want some vengeance, they want a conclusion, they want that satisfying culmination of events. So when you kind of differ from that slightly, it's very hard for an author, I think anyway, to kind of still hit those moments and make the reader feels satisfied. But he really does a great job in War of Eternal making sure that happens, so you're always kept on your toes for sure. And yeah, the whole journey is engaging with this great cast of characters. And I think still the second instalment is my favourite of the series, but book 3 is a great addition to the series. And yeah, I cannot wait to read more as the months go forward. And yeah, Eska is mounting up to be one of my favourite characters out there. I love how her kind of, it's a chronicler's tale, so she's telling the story of her past, but each time we get to know so much more about her, and I'm still wanting more.
Yeah, I've heard great things about Eska, and I see loads of people pop up on Twitter saying how much of an awesome character she is. The next one for me was a reread, and it's The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. I thought I would kind of do a few rereads just to get myself inspired to write a little bit more. In terms of this book, I was looking at the humour of The First Law, The Blade Itself, because Joe Abercrombie and someone else, which I'll talk about in a minute, are probably the funniest writers that I've ever read. Joe Abercrombie has this kind of this dark humour, kind of a wry sense of humour to his writing, and mix that with the nihilism of The First Law, and it is a great, great experience. I love The Blade itself. If you want to hear our kind of in-depth thoughts, spoiler-free, go check out our Blade itself review that we did last year, a couple of years ago.
Wow, yeah, I forgot we actually did a review.
Yeah, we did.
I think we had blonde hair for it.
That's
2021.
You know, it was a long time ago.
It was a long ago when we had blonde hair, yeah.
But yeah, The Blade itself, one of my favourite books ever written. Joe Abercrombie is in my top 3 authors, and it's just so much fun to read.
Very nice.
Even though people don't really say it's fun, I think it's fun.
I am really looking forward to rereading The First Law soon. I'm probably going to be listening to it because I didn't listen to the original trilogy or the Stan. No, I did the Stanleys, but then I read the Age of Madness physically.
It's good to listen to them on a reread.
And the Heroes, I only listened to Gorst's chapters on Audible because you told me to, but the rest I read physically. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to kind of going through that and hearing the renowned narration.
We should do a First Law ranking characters.
We should. Yeah. If you're also a huge lover of the First Law, then we may have a video coming up on that pretty soon, but also you can watch our video ranking.
You could talk about it.
First Law books. You could talk about it. Yeah. It is an option. We're not stopping you. In fact, we encourage it. Anyway, before I dig myself any further, next up we have Black Flame by Will White, the 3rd instalment of the Cradle series. I'm reading one of these a month and really enjoying them. They're palate cleansers, they're really easy to get through, and I think if you read them on their own, they may be a little bit disappointing because there's not too much depth, but when you're reading them together, because they are very short books, then they are hugely satisfying in my opinion, and there's so many mysteries that are being uncovered but also presented in each book, and so you always get loads of answers that are really entertaining and engaging and are huge revelations for kind of the direction that the story is going to take. But in the next sentence, Will White will present a whole host of new ones, but in a way that it feels pretty witty, very tongue-in-cheek at times, and the characters are great at the core of the story. And I love some of the introductions to Black Flame. There is a giant turtle. So what more could you ask for? And some people think it's a dragon, so it is just brilliant. And yeah, anywhere there's a turtle, yet alone a giant one, I am there for it. And Black Flame was a great introduction, great intro. What am I saying? Great addition to the series. Not an intro because it's book 3, but yeah, it's probably my favourite of Cradle.
You've got to put it together. We're going to lose subscribers.
I'm really sorry, everyone. Take over, Ed.
We forgive you, but we don't forget. The other funny writer that I love reading is Larry McMurtry, who I definitely feel Joe Abercrombie vibes from. Larry McMurtry is a Western author, very famous for Lonesome Dove and other cowboy books. And he wrote numerous screenplays as well and that kind of thing. But he's a very, very gifted writer. I love his sense of humour, the way that his characters, their dialect always comes into play in their dialogue and just adds this kind of funnier element to it. He also has a kind of a dark sense of humour, a very wry sense of humour, and I just love Westerns. I know lots of people in the fantasy community say they're not really too fond of Westerns. Obviously, if you read Red Country, did you love it? Did you not? But for me, Westerns probably could be one of my favourite, well, probably my favourite genre, really. Just something that I always absolutely love reading.
Probably, isn't it?
Consistently fantastic to me. When you get an author who captures that Western voice so brilliantly, as Larry McMurtry does, I feel like the writing, the prose, everything is just perfect. Like, it just can't get any better than that. Look at Charles Portis's True Grit, Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove, and other books like that. Joe Lansdale's The Thicket is another example. Just that prose, that way of writing, the characters. There's always such a good balance, and between philosophy, between humour, between tragedy, between the odyssey of the journey and of the myth of the American West. This is something that fascinates me, and Dead Man's Walk is definitely well up there for me.
Very nice. And which edition is that to the?
This is book 1 of the Lonesome Dove Quartet, but Lonesome Dove is book 3. But that was written first.
So you can read that first.
You could read Dead Man's Walk first. I did, but lots of people say go ahead and read Lonesome Dove. This isn't as widely loved, anywhere near as widely loved as Lonesome Dove. It is a smaller book, though. But then you have Comanche Moon, which is a bigger book, and then you have Lonesome Dove, which is a massive book, and then you have The Streets of Laredo, which is book 4.
So there's no correct way. You could do it in publication order.
No, I'd recommend probably going Lonesome Dove first, maybe.
Publication order.
Yeah.
Cool. Very nice. And next up I have The Way of Adan by Philip Chase. This is another self-published book, and by someone who, full transparency, we are lucky enough to call a good friend of ours, Philip Chase, fellow booktuber, Dr. Fantasy. himself with book 1 of
And
his
in
trilogy.
the red corner.
We are Philip Chase. And so it's going to be the year of Philip Chase because he is releasing one installment every 3 months of his trilogy. And so in September, the final book will be released, even though The Way of Rodan only came out in March. And so how lucky are we?
That's awesome.
It is pretty awesome, isn't it?
We're spoiled.
We are spoiled. And yeah, so this is brilliant kind of classic meets contemporary fantasy because we've kind of got those vibes of the kind of classic fantasy in the sense of some of the tropes early on before they're subverted a lot, presented a lot about there's kind of an ethereal sense. I've only read book 1 of Earthsea, but Philip Chase seems to capture that magical sense of the landscape, to the land, the power it presents, and yeah, the relationship with the characters, and it has got that kind of ethereal aspect to it, even though it still feels very rooted in reality in many senses.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I've only read 1 book of Earthsea, but I kind of got that kind of link between
I
them.
always hear Ursula Le Guin is compared to Tolkien a lot of the time in terms of the landscape and the mythologies that are behind her work. So I haven't personally read Ursula Le Guin, but I would love to.
Yeah. So as I said, I've only read 1, but I can definitely see the relationship between that trio. Only 1.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I've said that 3 times.
You've said that 3 times, but you've only read 1.
But Ed, I've only read 1, so why would I say something different?
That's true.
But anyway, yeah, The Way of Rodan is absolutely.
And you've only read 1 of that one as well.
Yeah, I've only read 1 of this one,
but you read that one twice.
I have read this one twice.
Okay.
Yeah. Just clarifying.
I sound like friendly.
Any more questions?
No.
Apologise for my dice. But yeah, this is an absolutely brilliant book. I loved it. Great characters. Day Raven, first of all, what a name. And yeah, he really lives up to that name as well. And I cannot wait to see where these characters go in the next few books. And if you want to hear kind of about the formation of this book without any spoilers, then you can go listen to our chat with Dr. Philip Chase himself, which we had the honour of interviewing him on the channel.
The privilege,
about a fortnight ago.
nay, the pleasure.
Knight's Tale reference. If you haven't already, you must watch that film.
Yeah,
it is a necessity.
A Knight's Tale.
With Heath Ledger.
Now, what makes me happy? Papa Gwyn's writing, and Papa Gwyn himself, really. He's a great guy.
He is a great guy.
Chap. Yeah, very lucky that he's our Papa. But anyway, A Time of Dread. I haven't read this book for a few years, really. Or not really, definitely. And I was definitely craving a reread, and I absolutely loved returning to the world of Time of Dread and The Faith from the Fallen. This is the book 1 of the trilogy set after The Faith from the Fallen, which I recommend. It's basically book 5 of The Faith from the Fallen because I like to put them both together. It is the Banished Lands, the saga of the Banished Lands. And I absolutely loved it. I think when I first read this, and I read The Time of Dread probably 3 times, 4 times now in my life. And I think the first times were always following my read of The Faith in the Fallen. And I always felt this kind of panging, this loss of the characters that were in The Faith in the Fallen. And I always adored the series, and every time I mentioned Korban, I was like, oh, Korban. This time around, where I kind of read it more of a standalone compared to The Faith in the Fallen, I really picked up on a lot of kind of the nuances of Papa Gwyn's writing, the kind of thriller and mystery aspect of this that has these horror elements that Stephen King would be proud of, I think.
As well as the tears, still.
As well as the tears, of course, when you mentioned Korban and Storm and anyone else that was alive in The Faith in the Fallen. And it also has this changing of history, this altering, and I just loved reading that, and it makes you so angry.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, I absolutely adored it. And I just, Papa Gwyn's writing is so accessible, but it's also very poignant at times, and it's also straight to the point. You know, as an aspiring writer, whenever I talk to Papa Gwyn about his writing, I say, how do you do this? Usually he says, I don't know really, I just did it, which is pretty cocky really, isn't it? I don't know why he can...
I wouldn't say cocky.
No, I'm only joking.
He's not going to make up the process.
No,
I went from point A, B, C, and then you go along this journey.
He's read so much, and it's just in his bones, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it took him 10 years to kind of prepare to write.
It did, yeah, a lot of practice. But yeah, Time of Dread, I absolutely loved returning to the Banished Lands, and I can't wait to read A Time of Blood in April.
Very nice, Ed, and... what a book A Time of Dread is. And next up I have The Burning God, which is book 3.
Well, actually, A Time of Dread is actually featuring you, isn't it? Because the central character, Drem, is actually...
one of the central characters.
Central character, Drem, is actually based on William.
Lucky enough.
Drem is based on William, and Svik, who likes cheese, is based on me.
There's a lot more to Svik in the Bloodsworn than cheese.
Yeah, he's got long hair.
He's a fan favourite, Ed.
Yeah, sometimes.
He's a fan favourite.
But Drem is based on William, and Drem's my favourite character in this series, apart from Cullen, obviously.
You thought it was based on you as well, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Should be.
But thank you, Ed. Pleasure doing business.
All right.
Pleasure doing business.
But you're not the character. It's based on you.
Based on me.
All your good bits.
Yeah, just sucking out everything else.
Yeah, so there's a couple good bits in there.
I wish I was like Drem.
Don't
I wish I could dig those pits like him as well. But not the rest.
That's not the first thing I think.
Yeah, I'm happy I don't live where he lives.
Yeah.
Because
Bone
there is
fells.
far too much tragedy in any
Being a
public
trapper
book.
is not a nice life.
It's not really, is it? It's just constant, isn't it? But next I have The Burning God by Rebecca F. Kuang, book 3 of her Poppy War trilogy, the finale of the Poppy War trilogy. And my thoughts on this are conflicted. There's parts that I was like, this is amazing, this is fantastic, I love the revelations, I love the direction it's going in. And there's other times I was like, wait a moment, what is going on? That cannot happen. And yeah, I'm not sure if I love it or hate it. It really depends on the day. So I think I'm going to go in and say I enjoyed it, kind of go in the middle, even though
So
some
you're
days
sitting on the fence.
yeah, I am sitting on the fence, and it's not very comfortable sitting on the fence. It really digs into you. But
Bring a pillow.
no, I did forget to bring a
Foolish.
classic mistake.
Yeah.
But yeah, so The Burning God, you may love it or you may hate it. It's a hard book to recommend because it really just depends. And it's not like, oh, if you like this trope, you'll enjoy The Burning God. I just have no idea how to explain it. But if you read the first two, then
This is coming from a semi-professional book reviewer.
yeah, the professional, very loose term, but yeah, if you read the first two, yeah, you might as well read this one. I think you'll enjoy it. It may provoke rage as well, but we'll see. We'll see. I'd love to hear people's thoughts on The Burning God. I do know it's quite controversial, but I thought, oh, I'll probably enjoy it. And now I'm joining the bandwagon of the controversial lot.
Wow, very nice. And the next one for me is The Way of Adan by Philip Chase. As Will said earlier, we were lucky enough to read this before. Well, we read this last year, but we were also rereading this in terms of because we were ready to chat with Dr. Philip Chase himself. And yeah, I absolutely love The Way of Adan. It has these influences that are also a part of us as a family. It has these Welsh influences, the Anglo-Saxon, the Old Norse style to it.
Yeah.
There's a literative verse in it. If you want to check out literative
It does feel
verse,
like it's written for us.
and I really recommend Tolkien's The Fall of Arthur, literative verse. That's my favourite.
Yeah.
And Philip Chase did that style of Anglo-Saxon poetry justice. This book, I mean, if you check out let's see, there might be a quote in here actually from, oh yeah, the Brothers Gwyn. But it is basically, in my opinion, Gemmell's characters invading the landscape of Tolkien, and it is a book that everyone will get something from. It is, it is unique, but it is also kind of drawing us into that old style of fantasy that we all have in our blood and we all love. It's a known and tried method. It has tropes that we really love to read. It has tropes being subverted. It has grim characters inhabiting a beautiful and green landscape that is just reminiscent of Tolkien and David Gemmell all merged into one, and I absolutely loved it. The Way of Adan is something that I will reread many, many times in my life, I'm sure, because every time I read it, I pick out a new layer from it, and I find something new, a new influence, something else. I mean, this is the only book where the villains chapters have made me cry. So yeah, there are things here that hit home for me.
If that doesn't show complex characters,
yeah, exactly. They are complex. It is a brilliant book. If you go check out our spoiler-free thoughts in our review
of The Way of Adan.
Yeah, but yeah, it was a wicked book.
Up here, I think. But anyway, up here, I think. Anyway, next I have Hall of Smoke by H.M. Long. And so this is a book that's been on my list for quite a while. And yeah, I decided to dive in. It's got Norse-inspired elements. And that is all I knew. So I went in kind of blind.
That's all you need to know.
I'm happy I did. This was a really good read. I thought the main central figure was brilliant. It was great kind of following her. As she has a lot of aspects of what she's grown up on, disillusioned, but also... and kind of that sense of duty enforced upon her as well, that weighs heavily upon her shoulders. And the own mystery of her background at times as well really came into play really, really well. And I loved how There's kind of a clash of cultures and deities as they're seen. There's kind of questions around that, which I really, really love, that kind of question of the power of those who you're submitting to. But yeah, I really loved how kind of those powers come into clash, and you see the history, how it's really kind of become distorted when you talk to other people. And I love that kind of use of misinformation. And yeah, it's a really compelling and engaging story with really interesting magical elements, and yeah, great use of Norse-inspired fantasy.
Very nice. We definitely need more Norse-inspired fantasy.
We do.
Not too much out there. Public Winds, The Bloodsworn, H.M. Long series. Also, Mark Lawrence's The Red Queen's War trilogy.
Yep, and Shattered Sea.
Joe Abercrombie's Shattered Sea, but not too much else. Should we get some more? Anyway, the last one for me was a book by Kent Nerburn, and this is a book called The Wisdom of the Native Americans. Now, Kent Nerburn is...
That looks like a really nice edition.
It's a lovely edition, but Kent Nerburn is a very important figure, I think, and he is a white man who writes, literary fiction, and non-fiction at times as well, and he's done lots and lots of work on reservations, talking about indigenous cultures, Native Americans, and here he is. I mean, I've read 2 books by him now, and I'm desperate to read more because he's a great writer. He's got a great voice. He's got really important things to say, but more importantly, he gives a platform for other people who have important things to say, and through his writing, he is able to, give us the opinions, the thoughts, the mindset, and cultural importance of other people that we wouldn't actually have the chance to hear from. This book is quotes from famous Native Americans through the years, whether it's through speeches made to Anglo settlers, or whether it's set through trials where chiefs were doing talks to other people about things that matter to them. This is just full of quotes to live by. There's lots of aspects here. There are several sections. One section is about the kind of Native American lifestyle, Native American animals and that kind of thing, and ways to live, really. And I really, really loved it. It was amazing. It's just, and this is kind of just a very small window into an aspect of Native American life, and all of these different cultures are written about in this book, where Kent Nerburn is using many quotes that have meant a lot to him as a person, and with these quotes they come with really important messages, and it just feels like it's an important book to read. There's another book that I'll be talking about during our April reads, which I've read already, which is amazing. So Kent Nerburn is someone you'll definitely see appearing on the channel, from me anyway, lots more in the future. But yeah, I really enjoyed this as just kind of a pocket edition of inspiring quotes that are also give you a small insight into the mindset of famous people in history.
Very nice. Can I feel that edition?
Yeah.
Looks like it feels nice. Oh,
yeah.
It's good feeling.
I love that colour, like clay.
Yeah, really nice.
Dark clay.
And the texture as well. Spot on. But next up I have Caesar's Gallic Wars from 58 to 50 BC. 10 points to whoever can guess what this is about. Hazard a guess, Ed?
The Rigante series.
It is true. It's about David Gilmour's Rigante. No, this is about Caesar's Gallic Wars. And so, yeah, it's when Julius Caesar himself took an army into, guess where? Gaul, and he conquered a lot of the tribes there, which was something that everyone just went crazy over. They thought this is not possible, especially the speed and efficiency with which he did it. And that does not mean he was a good man. He was far from it. And efficient usually means brutal and ruthless, and yeah, a lot of destruction along the way. But yeah, I did find it very interesting looking into kind of the insights of how Julius Caesar did this, how he kind of conformed to the classic Roman leader that people loved, and he became like a national hero, but also how he differed, and that's where a lot of his success came from, because he was unpredictable at times. He wasn't afraid to go against the grain, because he was probably a bit of an egomaniac, so he thought whatever he did was going to be right. And so yeah, sometimes being an egomaniac led to him being victorious, but definitely not a good person. But yeah, I wrote a lot of notes, so it did actually take me quite a while to read this, because I was writing things down as I was going through it. But yeah, really enjoyed it, and very insightful, as I said.
Over to you, because I've finished.
And I have one more, The Forgotten Legion by Ben Kane. And this is book 1 of the Forgotten Legion trilogy, and I believe Ben Kane's debut. And so this takes place. It was weird. I finished Lustrum, and then I thought, you know what, I'm going to try the Forgotten Legion. And it literally
Because it's Roman historical fiction.
But the Forgotten Legion takes place at literally a month after where Lustrum finishes.
Oh, cool.
And I had no idea, so it's really interesting.
So it's Roman historical fiction.
Yes, yeah, and it's really interesting seeing kind of a different depiction of a lot of the characters. But then I think it's good it went in a very different direction, because I would have been like, oh, actually, that's not what Robert Harris said.
More of a military.
A lot more military, and a lot more from like what was it? Yeah, when it's from the point of view of people at the bottom, like the grunt level kind of
boots on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of like Lustrum is following like Cicero and Caesar and Crassus and
chess
Pompey,
players.
the people at the top. Yeah, but this is people. There are gladiators in this, and it is most of the perspectives are those who have been enslaved. And so at the core of it are a brother and sister who are slaves, and they are separated. And then there's a Gallic warrior, and then there's someone else. There's quite a few different perspectives, and I love how Ben Kane is not afraid to give us just a few paragraphs from one POV and then not come back to them, but they add a lot of flavour to kind of the scene that they play into, and a lot of different insights. And I thought Ben Kane, it shows a lot of confidence doing that, but it paid off. And yeah, I really enjoyed The Forgotten Legion. I'm currently listening to book 2, and yeah, I think it's a bit like what you said with Youngbloods, that book 2 is, I'm really enjoying it actually, but I think I just prefer book 1 because of that coming of age, which never gets old. And so yeah, it's a great read, and no wonder that so many people have loved Ben Kane's writing.
I always find it hard reading like Roman historical fiction because I just don't like the Romans.
Yeah, well, in this, you still don't like them because it's like following Spartacus, who's a slave who hates kind of the situation he's been put into.
And
obviously,
now what intrigued me is when
it's
you
like
said,
the Wolf Den.
when you said the Gallic warrior. That intrigued me.
Tell me more. Well, there's a Gaulish warrior, and so
is it more than a paragraph?
A lot more. He's one of the main POVs, and so
say his name.
He does become a slave.
What? Spoiler?
Yeah. No, it's in the blurb. But yeah, that is The Forgotten Legion, and yeah, great read.
Very nice. And there you have it. That is what we read in the month of March. At the beginning, I said, I expect, I wanted a bit more, but really, that is actually pretty brilliant for us, isn't it? We read quite a lot, very consistent. All round great reads, lots of rereads from me, lots of research for you as well on your writing journey as well, and some brilliant Roman reads as well. It was so much fun. Let's talk about our book of the month to start with then, and book of the month for you, Will, is?
So I'm going to say too, because The Way of Adan is my book of the month, and we usually don't include rereads, but we didn't talk about The Way of Adan last year because of, obviously, it wasn't out yet, and we didn't want to talk about it too far in advance. So I'm saying The Way of Adan, so everyone do go read this. I love kind of the blend between the classic and modern fantasy. I thought that was really great. A really stark contrast between the two, but it made it feel... It didn't feel jarring. It felt very organic, didn't it? And especially when you're partnered with the coming of age, it kind of that loss of innocence. It really kind of crossed that boundary really well, that barrier. And so that is one of my book of the months. But then one that isn't a reread, I will say Lustrum by Robert Harris, book 2 of the Cicero trilogy.
Very nice. And my book of the month is also The Way of Adan by Philip Chase.
No surprise there.
As I said earlier, I loved it. As I said in our spoiler-free review, I loved it. As I said in our interview with Dr. Chase himself, I loved it. And I can't wait for June when book 2 will be coming round. So yeah, thank you, Philip Chase, for this. It is amazing, and thank you for featuring our quotes as well. We are absolutely honoured.
It is an
probably
honour.
The best thing that's happened to us on our BookTube channel.
It really is. It really,
100%.
really is.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching our video on what we read during March. Please let us know in the comments below. Have you read any of these? What author would you recommend we read if we want to read some humour, as well as serious topics as well? But please let us know your thoughts and feelings. What are you reading at the moment? What do you want to read in April? How many words did you read? Let us know.
Let us know. But everyone, as Ed said, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you had a great reading month in March, and hopefully April's kicked off pretty well as well. And so yeah, there we go. We are the Brothers Gwyn. I'm Will. This is my brother Ed. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe. Truth and courage.
Truth and courage. The Brothers Gwyn.